Imagine you're the CEO of a thriving tech company. Your product is revolutionary, your team is top-notch, and your growth has been exponential. But suddenly, you hit a wall. Customer complaints are piling up, your best employees are burning out, and despite pouring more money into marketing, sales are plateauing. You've tried everything in your entrepreneurial playbook: optimization, restructuring, even bringing in high-priced consultants. But nothing seems to work. The harder you push, the more resistance you face. Sound familiar? Whether you're running a Fortune 500 company or managing your household, we've all faced problems that seem to defy simple solutions. It's as if the world is conspiring against us, turning our well-intentioned efforts into frustrating dead ends. But what if I told you that these persistent problems aren't a sign of failure, but an invitation to see the world in a radically different way? What if the key to unlocking these challenges lies not in trying harder, but in understanding the hidden connections that shape our world? Today we're diving into a book that has the power to transform how you see and interact with the world around you. It's a book that has influenced leaders across industries, from tech giants to environmental pioneers. I'm talking about Thinking in Systems, a Primer by Donella H. Meadows. This isn't just another business book with a catchy framework or a 5-step solution. It's a fundamental reimagining of how the world works, offering insights that can help you navigate the most complex challenges of our time. Whether you're trying to grow your business, tackle climate change, or simply understand why your New Year's resolutions never seem to stick, the ideas in this book will give you a powerful new lens to view these challenges. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a journey that will challenge your assumptions, expand your perspective, and equip you with tools to become a more effective leader and problem solver. Welcome back to CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf, your exclusive pass to the most impactful business books that are shaping industries and driving innovation. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to guide you through another game-changing book that belongs on every leader's bookshelf. Before we dive into today's book, let me remind you why we're here. In a world drowning in information, it's not more data we need, but better ways to understand and act on that data. That's why we focus on the top 1% of books, the ones that don't just inform, but transform how we think and operate in the business world. Today's book, Thinking in Systems by Donella H. Meadows, is a perfect example of this transformative power. It introduces us to the world of systems thinking, a way of understanding the world that focuses on the relationships between parts rather than the parts themselves. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Systems thinking sounds like some abstract academic concept that has nothing to do with my day-to-day business challenges. But I promise you, by the end of this episode, you'll see how this approach can revolutionize the way you approach problems, make decisions, and lead your organization. So whether you're driving to work, hitting the treadmill, or taking a well-deserved break, get ready to transform your commute into a mini-MBA session. Let's explore how thinking in systems can make you a more effective leader and innovator. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is a system? Meadows defines a system as an interconnected set of elements that is coherently organized in a way that achieves something. That might sound a bit abstract, so let's break it down with a simple example we can all relate to: a coffee shop. Picture your favorite local cafe. At first glance, you might see it as just a collection of individual elements: baristas, espresso machines, customers, and cups of coffee. But through the lens of systems thinking, we start to see the intricate web of relationships that make this cafe function. The cafe isn't just a random assortment of people and things. It's a carefully orchestrated system with a clear purpose to provide customers with their caffeine fix while turning a profit. Every element in this system, from the sourcing of coffee beans to the training of baristas to the layout of the shop, is interconnected and contributes to this goal. But to truly understand how this system works, we need to grasp three key concepts: stocks, flows, and feedback loops. Stocks are the elements in a system that you can see, count, or measure at any given time. In our cafe, stocks might include the inventory of coffee beans, the number of customers in line, or the amount of money in the cash register. Flows are the actions that change these stocks over time. The rate at which new customers enter the shop is a flow. So is the rate at which coffee is brewed and served. Feedback loops are where things get really interesting. These are the mechanisms by which systems regulate themselves. In our cafe, a simple feedback loop might be the relationship between the length of the queue and the speed at which baristas work. As the line gets longer, the baristas might speed up, which in turn reduces the line length. Now here's where systems thinking starts to reveal its power. Once you understand these components and how they interact, you can start to predict how the system will behave and how to influence it. For instance, let's say our cafe owner notices that profits are down. A linear thinker might jump to simple solutions, raise prices, cut staff, or spend more on advertising, but a systems thinker would look at the entire system. They might notice that the slow service, a flow, is causing customer dissatisfaction, affecting multiple stocks, leading to fewer repeat visits, another flow, ultimately reducing profits. The solution. It might not be any of the obvious fixes. Perhaps investing in a new, faster espresso machine would speed up service, increase customer satisfaction, boost repeat visits, and ultimately raise profits, all while potentially allowing for lower prices and happier staff. This is the power of systems thinking. It allows us to see beyond simple cause and effect relationships and understand the deeper structures that drive system behavior. So here's a challenge for you. Take a moment to think about your own business or a significant project you're working on. Can you identify the key stocks, flows, and feedback loops? What interconnections might you be overlooking? Understanding your business as a system can reveal leverage points you never knew existed. Remember, the goal isn't to oversimplify complex realities, but to find useful ways of thinking about them. By seeing the systems around us, we can work with them, not against them. Now that we've grasped the basics of what a system is, let's dive into one of the most profound insights from Meadows' book: the role of mental models in shaping system behavior. Meadows argues that our mental models, our internal representations of how the world works, often oversimplify complex systems. This oversimplification can lead to unexpected and sometimes disastrous results when we try to intervene in these systems. Let me illustrate this with a story that Meadows shares in the book. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union was facing a housing shortage in Moscow. The solution seemed obvious: build more housing as quickly as possible. The result was a massive construction campaign of standardized apartment blocks known as Khrushchevkas. On the surface, this seemed like a logical solution to a straightforward problem. More people need houses, build more houses, simple, right? But systems rarely behave in such straightforward ways. The rapid construction solved the immediate housing crisis, but it created a host of new problems. The buildings were of poor quality, lacking in amenities, and created isolated, often crime-ridden neighborhoods. The solution to one problem had spawned a whole set of new ones. This is a classic example of what Meadows calls a system archetype, recurring patterns of system behavior that crop up across different contexts. In this case, it's the fixes that fail archetype, where a solution to a problem has unintended consequences that exacerbate the original issue. Other common archetypes include tragedy of the commons, where individual actors, acting in their own self-interest, ultimately deplete a shared resource, and success to the successful, where initial advantages compound over time, leading to monopolies or extreme inequalities. Understanding these archetypes can be incredibly powerful. They help us recognize patterns in complex situations and avoid common pitfalls. More importantly, they challenge us to look beyond our initial assumptions and consider the wider implications of our actions. So, how can we apply this in a business context? Let's consider a common scenario. A company facing declining sales decides to slash prices to boost demand. This might work in the short term, but it could trigger a price war with competitors, eroding industry-wide profitability. It might also cheapen the brand's image, making it harder to raise prices in the future. A systems thinker would consider these potential feedback loops before implementing such a strategy. The key is to constantly challenge our mental models. Are we seeing the whole picture? What assumptions are we making? What potential consequences are we overlooking? Meadows encourages us to embrace uncertainty and complexity rather than trying to oversimplify. This doesn't mean we need to understand every detail of a system. That's often impossible, but it does mean being aware of our limitations and being open to new information and perspectives. Here's an exercise you can try. Think about a persistent problem in your organization. Now imagine explaining this problem to someone from a completely different industry or background. What aspects of the situation might they see that you've been overlooking? How might their perspective challenge your existing mental model? By broadening our perspective and embracing the complexity of systems, we can make more informed decisions and create more robust, sustainable solutions. Remember, the goal isn't to predict the future with perfect accuracy, but to enhance our understanding and improve our ability to navigate complex systems. Now that we've explored the basics of systems and the importance of our mental models, let's turn to one of the most practical and powerful concepts in Meadows' book, leverage points. Leverage points are places within a system where a small change can lead to a large shift in behavior. Meadows describes them as points of power, the spots where we can intervene to create significant, lasting change. But here's the catch. The most obvious leverage points are often the least effective, while the most powerful ones are frequently counterintuitive and overlooked. Meadows presents a list of 12 leverage points in increasing order of effectiveness. At the bottom are numbers, things like subsidies, taxes, and standards. While these are often the go-to solutions for policymakers and managers, they typically have limited impact on the overall behavior of the system. At the top of the list are paradigms, the mindsets out of which the system arises. Changing these can lead to profound shifts in system behavior. But paradigms are also the hardest to change, deeply embedded in our culture and worldview. Let's bring this to life with a business example. Imagine you're running a software company that's struggling with product quality. The obvious solution might be to hire more QA testers or impose stricter quality standards, interventions at the lower end of Meadows' list. But a systems thinker might look for higher leverage points. Perhaps the issue isn't a lack of testing, but a disconnect between developers and end users. In this case, a more effective intervention might be to change the information flows in the system, maybe by embedding developers with customers for a week each quarter. Going even further up the list, you might examine the goals of the system. Is the company too focused on short-term profits at the expense of long-term quality? Changing this underlying goal could lead to a cascade of changes throughout the organization. At the highest level, you might challenge the paradigm of how software is developed altogether. This is what companies like Basecamp have done with their concept of calm technology, fundamentally reimagining the relationship between software and its users. The power of this concept is that it encourages us to look beyond the obvious solutions and seek out interventions that can create systemic, lasting change. It's not about pulling harder on the levers we can see, but about finding the hidden levers that can shift the entire system. So how can you apply this in your own context? Start by mapping out the system you're trying to influence. What are its key components, flows, and feedback loops? Then consider potential interventions at different levels of Meadows' list. What would it look like to change the parameters of the system, the information flows, the the goals, the paradigms. Remember, the highest leverage points are often not obvious and may even be counterintuitive. They might require challenging deeply held assumptions or taking actions that seem, on the surface, unrelated to the problem at hand. For instance, when Paul O'Neill took over as CEO of Alcoa in 1987, he shocked Wall Street by declaring that his top priority was not profits or growth, but worker safety. This seemed, to many, like a distraction from the real issues facing the aluminum giant. But O'Neill understood that worker safety was a high leverage point that would drive improvements throughout the entire system. By the time he retired in 2000, Alcoa's annual net income was 5 times higher than when he started. The concept of leverage points reminds us that in complex systems, the most effective solutions are often not the most obvious ones. By understanding the structure of the system and looking for high leverage interventions, we can create profound, lasting change with minimal effort. As we near the end of our exploration of thinking in systems, let's zoom out and consider how these ideas apply to one of the most pressing challenges facing businesses today: long-term sustainability. Meadows, who was an environmental scientist as well as a systems thinker, argued that many of our most serious environmental and social problems stem from a failure to think in systems. We focus on short-term gains without considering long-term consequences. We optimize parts of the system at the expense of the whole. We ignore feedback loops until it's too late. Systems thinking offers a powerful antidote to these tendencies. It encourages us to consider wider boundaries and longer time horizons. It helps us understand concepts like resilience, self-organization, and hierarchy, all crucial for building sustainable systems. Let's unpack these ideas a bit. Resilience is a system's ability to survive and persist in a variable environment. A resilient business isn't just efficient, it's able to withstand shocks and adapt to changing conditions. Think of companies like Nokia, which successfully pivoted from paper products to telecommunications, or IBM, which transformed from a hardware company to a services and cloud computing giant. Self-organization is the ability of a system to create new structures and behaviors. In business, this might manifest as innovation bubbling up from all levels of the organization, not just top-down directives. Companies like Google and 3M, famous for giving employees time to work on their own projects, are tapping into this principle. Hierarchy in systems thinking isn't about command and control, but about the idea that systems are nested within other systems. A sustainable business understands its place in larger economic, social, and environmental systems. It considers not just its shareholders, but all its stakeholders, employees, customers, communities, and the environment. Applying these concepts can lead to radically different business models. Take Interface, the world's largest manufacturer of modular carpet. Under the leadership of Ray Anderson, the company embarked on a mission to eliminate any negative impact on the environment by 2020. This wasn't just about reducing waste or using recycled materials. It was a fundamental reimagining of the entire business system. Interface looked at the whole life cycle of its products, from raw material extraction to end-of-life disposal. They developed a system to take back and recycle old carpets, not just their own, but their competitors too. They invested in renewable energy and redesigned their products for easy disassembly and recycling. The result? Not only did Interface dramatically reduce its environmental impact, but it also found new sources of innovation and competitive advantage. The company's stock price increased by a factor of 5 over 5 years, and it continues to be a leader in sustainable business practices. This example illustrates a key point from Meadows' work. Sustainability isn't about sacrifice or constraint. It's about designing smarter, more resilient systems that can thrive over the long term. So how can you apply these ideas in your own context? Start by expanding your view of your business ecosystem. Who are all the stakeholders affected by your operations? What are the long-term trends that could impact your industry? How can you design your business to be more resilient and adaptive? Consider creating a systems map of your business, showing not just the flow of money and products, but also information, resources, and waste. Look for feedback loops and potential leverage points. Where could small changes lead to big improvements in sustainability? Remember, the goal isn't to optimize for a single variable like short-term profit, but to create a system that can thrive and evolve over time. This might mean sacrificing some efficiency for resilience or some short-term gains for long-term viability. As Meadows puts it, we can't impose our will on a system. We can listen to what the system tells us and discover how its properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than could ever be produced by our will alone. As we wrap up our exploration of thinking in systems, let's recap the key insights we've uncovered. First, we learned to see the world in terms of interconnected systems with stocks, flows, and feedback loops. This perspective helps us understand why complex problems often resist simple solutions and how small changes can sometimes lead to big effects. Second, we explored how our mental models shape our understanding of systems and how common archetypes can help us recognize patterns in diverse situations. By challenging our assumptions and embracing complexity, we can make more informed decisions and avoid common pitfalls. Third, we discovered the power of leverage points, places in a system where small changes can lead to large shifts in behavior. We learned that the most effective interventions are often not the most obvious ones, and that changing goals or paradigms can have far-reaching effects. Finally, we saw how systems thinking can be applied to the challenge of sustainability, helping us create businesses that are not just profitable, but resilient and adaptive in the face of change. The beauty of systems thinking is that it's not just a set of tools or techniques, but a way of seeing the world. It's a perspective that can be applied to any challenge, from managing a small team to tackling global issues like climate change. As leaders, embracing systems thinking can transform how we approach problems and make decisions. It encourages us to look beyond quick fixes and consider the long-term systemic impacts of our actions. It helps us see connections and patterns that others might miss, giving us a competitive edge in an increasingly complex business landscape. But perhaps most importantly, systems thinking instills a sense of humility and curiosity. It reminds us that the world is more complex and interconnected than we can fully comprehend, and that there's always more to learn. Donella Meadows herself put it beautifully. Remember always that everything you know and everything everyone knows is only a model. Get your model out there where it can be viewed. Invite others to challenge your assumptions and add their own. Instead of becoming a champion for one possible explanation or model, collect as many as possible. As you go about your day, I encourage you to start looking for systems in your work and life. What stocks, flows, and feedback loops can you identify? What mental models might you be relying on? Where are the potential leverage points for change? By cultivating this systems perspective, you'll not only become a more effective leader and problem solver, but you'll also gain a deeper appreciation for the intricate, interconnected world we live in. Before we wrap up, I want to encourage you to take what you've learned today and put it into action. Here are a few ways you can do that. First, share your insights. I'd love to hear how you're applying systems thinking in your work or life. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag CEO's Library. Your perspective could spark valuable discussions and insights for others in our community. Second, if you found this episode valuable, I highly recommend getting your hands on a copy of Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. We've only scratched the surface of the insights in this book. For your convenience, I've included an Amazon link in the episode description where you can purchase the full book or audiobook. Remember, in the words of systems thinker Peter Senge, today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. By embracing systems thinking, we can create solutions that don't just solve today's problems, but set us up for long-term success. Thank you for joining me on this journey through thinking in systems. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in your business and your life.